This is a demonstration video for second year architectural design studio, and with this demo what I want to talk about is orthographic drawing in Autocad. And this is not really intended as a comprehensive overview of the software. There's a lot of features in Autocad and there's just things that we really can't cover completely, but what I do want to cover are the basic commands as they relate to diagramming and analytical drawing that we're going to be doing for this phase of the project. Okay, and I started off AutoCAD in basically as if you just installed it. So all the panels are by default, all the settings are default. They're basically stock. Okay, and what I want to do really quick is just set up the environment so that it's more efficient and we only have the options we need. Okay. We do this just to kind of clarify things and make it less complicated. So we go ahead and make sure that everything's turned off here except for object snaps, and I'm going to turn off dynamic input if that's turned on, and turn off show hide line weight. Okay. Next thing I'm going to do is go to Properties Inspector and just look at the essential properties. You don't really need all this other extra stuff. It's just complicated. And then lastly, I'm going to click on the arrow here for layers and just go ahead and show all the layers. Check to make sure you're in top viewport. Don't mess with it, okay? And then the last bit I want to do is I'm going to pull out the command window here. I'm going to grab that corner piece, click this little arrow, and then drag this a bit. You don't have to do this, but I do this because I want to show you how the commands work, and I want to kind of show you the input window a little bit larger. Okay, we'll see in a second why that's pretty important. Then I'm going to go ahead and open up the template that we put on Moodle. So I put it on my desktop. It's called template, and this is just the one that you get by default. And you'll notice right away that what you get with this are a series of layers that are set up with different colors, and each color represents a line weight, and they basically go in order from smallest to largest. Some of them are gray, and some of them are red. Okay, and that's going to be our default kind of palette of pen colors. Okay, so I'm going to go and do that, and then I'm going to close up this original one and maximize my viewport. So I've just had this template, and then I'm going to go ahead and save the copy of this. I'm going to save it as my diagrams. You can save it whatever you want, but that way I have a copy of the template file that hasn't been touched. And if anything happens to it, you can always go ahead and download it off of Moodle, but I prefer just before I override it to save a copy of it. So in the diagrams file, and I'm ready to begin drawing. Okay, and I'm going to start just by showing you the line tool. Remember, everything this semester is driven by lines, and you do that by clicking on the line tool icon, and then notice how at the bottom here it says specify point. So you can always look at the command window if you don't know the commands yet, and the command window will tell you essentially what to do. And it wants a point. So if I click, and then it says specify next point, and if I click again, and you'll notice that I can keep adding points if I want to. And then when I press enter, it's going to stop the command. Okay. You can undo anything by doing Command Z, right? Just like in any other program on Mac. Let's do that again here. So I can just do a single line if I pick a point, then I press enter. Another thing, interesting thing about the line command, or any tool really, is that you can start it again by pressing the enter key. So the enter key is going to launch the last command. So if I press enter, I'm automatically in line mode, and I can make another line, press enter, stop the point, press enter again. Okay. To delete things, you select them and press delete. I just undid there. Alternately, you can select them and press E for erase. And you'll notice that a lot of the commands you can use an icon for, or you can type them in. So line, you can type in line, L-I-N-E, press enter, and then you get the line command. You can also type L, like once you start typing in, L actually works pretty well. And that's actually the way that I would like you guys to learn how to use AutoCAD, is basically by using the commands with the keyboard and using the mouse just to point and select. Okay, that's how experts use it. Pretty much have your left hand on the keyboard and your right hand on the mouse. Okay, so get into some practice with that. Okay, and in general with these demos, what I like you guys to do is actually watch what I'm doing first, and then maybe pause it and try it yourself. And if you have questions or trouble, rewind it. Okay, it's really hard to follow along with if you're trying to do it at the same time that I do. Okay, so watch first and then try it yourself. And if you need it, go back and rewind it. That's the great thing about the videos, is that you can always go at your own pace. If it takes you a little while, if you have to watch it a couple times, that's okay. Videos are great for that. Okay. If you have any questions about stuff, feel free to send me an email or save a question for class. We can talk about it. Okay. But in general, take your time, make sure you understand what we're talking about, and just experiment with it. Okay. It's going to take a while to get the hang of, but if you practice, it comes pretty quickly. Okay. So that is generally how to make a freehand line. What if you want to do a measured line? Which is, what if you know how large something is? The first thing you want to do is make sure that your units are correct. And to do that, you're going to go to Format, Units, and you're going to make sure that the type is set to architectural. This way you can use inches and feet as opposed to just decimals or metric. And typically in the United States, we like our dimensions to be feet, okay, and inches. So set that to architectural, press OK. And now whenever you input dimensions, you can use American units. And I'll show you that in a second with a line here. So I can start a line, and I pick a point, and what I can do is if I use the at symbol, so I go at, so that's shift 2, and then I say 10 foot, and then it's kind of like coordinates like you learned in geometry. So you have x, y coordinate, so the x coordinate is going to be 10 in this direction, and the y coordinate is 0. So 10 foot, comma, 0. And then that made the point, and then I'm going to press enter. Now you notice that was actually off the screen. So if I, zoom out with my mouse wheel, that might not take me far enough. So you can do zoom out with Z, zoom, and then E for extents. And that'll actually give me the extents of what's on the space. You'll notice, well, a couple of things. So one, zoom you can accomplish with the Z command, the zoom command. You can also use the mouse wheel in and out, but sometimes it has limits, like it doesn't quite reach all the way. Panning is accomplished with the middle mouse button, okay? Or P for pan. I can press P, enter, and that'll let me pan, and then I just press enter to quit. Okay, so pan, zoom, those are big features. The other thing too is, like, if you want to draw, so that gives us a straight line. If I wanted to draw a line vertically, I could click a point, and I could say at 0, because I'm not moving in the X, and I could say comma 5 foot, and that will take me 5 foot up. You can also do negatives, so if I take a line, I could say at negative 10 foot, comma 0, and that would take me 10 foot in the other direction. Okay, so that's a quick way to make measured lines with each other. And the at symbol, you might have a question about that. The at symbol means that it's in relation to where you start the line. So there's actually, coordinates. If you look on the bottom of the screen, it tells you exactly where the mouse cursor is. And 0, 0 is where this little world widget is, this XY coordinate. But I don't know about you, but I find it really hard to know exactly where I am on the screen and know exactly where the extra point's going to be. But I do know that if I click somewhere where I want to start it, if I know that I want a 10-foot line, that makes a lot of sense to me. So, the at, let's say 20 foot, 20 foot, 0, right? Makes a lot of sense to me. You can do multiple coordinates too. I could take a line and I can say, I want a line at 5 foot, 5 foot. That gives me a diagonal line. So that's how you get actual measured coordinates in your drawing. And the thing is, when we draw in AutoCAD, we always draw lines to the real world scale. Okay, you don't scale your drawings when you're working in this like model space. You draw things in the actual dimensions that they are. I'll show you in a minute how to actually, when you plot, that you're going to change the scale to quarter scale or half scale or 100 to 1 to 200 to 1, okay? But when you draw it as it is, okay? That's because, again, you can always change the scale when you plot. If you do, the calculations, here, it's going to mess things up later, okay? So just draw things as they are. Even if they're ginormous, and even if they're small, you draw them as they are, okay? Just going to save you trouble later. So, that's, lines. Another thing, too, when you're drawing freehand lines is orthographics, snap. So I can draw a line, and what if I want to make a straight line? If I hold shift down, that's actually going to restrict my drawings to 90 degrees and 0 degrees, and any kind of permutation of that. So that's really useful. The other thing is if I turn on polar tracking, you'll notice that I get this kind of snap every 15 degrees. Okay, and that lets me draw in increments. So I can do 45 degrees, 30 degrees, 60 degrees, whatever. And that's this polar tracking snap. You can change that by right-clicking it, and you can make it anything from like 5 degrees to 45 degrees. Okay, so that's also useful too for restricting things to certain angles. There's other kinds of lines you can make. You notice originally when I drew this line, when I used the line tool, I could keep kind of making lines. What's interesting about that though is that each of these is actually treated by the computer as a separate line. And that can be good, but when you want to, do some operations on them, it doesn't grab the entire thing. It doesn't treat it as one line, as one solid line. It treats it as a collection of lines. If you want to make something one line, you want to get into the polyline tool. And so now if I make something similar with that, that's all one line. Okay. So the polylines are considered one line. Lines are considered a group of separate lines. Another kind of line that you'd be interested in is a spline. And splines are free-form kind of curves. And so you might use this for topo or for strange organic lines that your project requires. I'm going to demonstrate something here with splines. I'm using Ortho Snap by holding Shift. You take a spline, and I'm using snaps here. It's an object snap, and this allows me. These are different kinds of snaps. I can snap to the endpoints of things, and so I'm snapping as I draw a spline. And notice that splines always go through the points that you click, and then they kind of adjust to that line. You can also click on it, and you can move those points around. You can stretch them after the fact. Splines take a little bit of getting used to, but if you work with them, you can very much generate any kind of shape you want, and they're very precise. Okay. So again, snaps. I haven't really talked about these, but if you have snaps turned on, and you make another form, right, it's going to let you snap to endpoints. Or let's say like the midpoint, the center of something. It's very useful. So keep an eye on those. If you want to change the options for that, you right-click it, and you can say like, I only want to do snaps that are midpoint and endpoint, or I want to look at the intersection of 2 points, or I want a line that's perpendicular to it. So play with those if you get a chance. If they get in your way, like you start snapping to things that you don't want to, you can toggle them off. Okay, so lines are pretty much our bread and butter. And there's one last one that I want to talk about, and it's a freehand line. And this has its uses. If you type in the command sketch, you can actually just draw with the mouse cursor. Okay, and I don't really recommend this because it's not very precise. I mean, you can see it's kind of scumbly, and it's just not a very perfect line. But sometimes it's the only thing that'll do. Okay, and so I'm gonna, sketch line is also one of your options. I would prefer splines, but that's also something that you can do. Okay, so we've talked basically about lines, and the next thing I want to talk about is how to make those lines certain line weights. Okay, so I'm going to take a line, and actually I'm going to go ahead and show you another command that's useful called copy. So copy, C-O-P-Y. And I can take that with the copy tool, and I have this line selected. I can click on whatever point I want to copy it from, and every time I click, I'm holding Shift right now to do Ortho Snap, I make a copy of it. Okay? And so that's actually going to give me several lines that are copied. To change the line weight, we're going to put it on a different layer, and that's actually how our system's set up. So if I choose a few lines, I go to the Properties Inspector, I go to Layer, I can change the layer. So let's say I want to do 0.7, right? So I click on that, and they turn yellow. And yellow, as we know from these colors here, is 0.7 millimeters. Okay. Do another line, I can choose that one, and I go to Layer, and I can say this one is 0.12. And that's actually white. Okay, so it doesn't look like it's changed anything. Grab a couple more. Let's make these 0.5. Grab a couple more. And let's make these 0.3. And then maybe let's do a gray. I think I said this, but escape gets you out of a command, or it deselects something. So if you press escape, you're not selected anymore. Okay, so I go in, and let's make this, that's actually 1.2. Let's make this one 40% gray, and maybe 20% gray. Okay, and so that's actually set us up with different layers. Now, another way you can do it is if you are not drawing anything yet, you can change your layer to, let's say, red, right? And then anything that I draw is going to be on that layer. Okay. Another thing that is important is the draw order, and you can kind of see how this is overlapping it. And so if you want lines to be behind other lines or in front of other lines, you can choose a line, and you can right-click it, and you can say draw order, and you can say send to front or send to back. Okay. And actually, I'm going to go ahead and copy this, and I'm going to send one of these to the front, and send one to the back. Okay, and zoom, and you can also zoom all, so AL, and that'll zoom to everything. Okay. And so these are just a set of lines, and again, it's good to organize things on layers. We have this kind of hierarchy established here, so make use of these layers as we set them up. Let's go ahead and quick practice with plotting. Let's get this out of the program, okay? And to do that, I'm going to go ahead, and before I do anything, actually, I want to go ahead and make sure that my pens are set up. So I go to File, Plot Styles, and this opens up a little Finder window. And if I go to my desktop, let's see, actually I had a file saved here. Let's look around here. Yeah, under AutoCAD, I have this CTB file, this ARCH2101. That's the file that I got from Moodle. I would drag it into my plot styles folder, and it's going to tell me to override it. Fine. So you do that, it's in your plot styles folder, then you're good to go. Okay, before you plot anything. We're going to go ahead and say plot, P-L-O-T, and that's fine, let's continue. And just, this is the kind of default window. Actually, let's go ahead and we gave you guys a layout. If you go into this model, you can go into PDF layout. So you click on model, go to PDF layout, and this is going to be your layout view. Okay, and this is your piece of paper. This is set up to be an 11 by 17, which is the ratio of the high definition monitor that we're going to be using. And nothing's in here right now. So what we're going to do is we're going to double click in here. And that gives us actually a view of our drawing. And you can pan and zoom. And you can see here that this is actually, these are on lines here. Okay, and so you can arrange this. And when you double click, you're out of it. And so you can pan and zoom here and it's your page. But if you double click and you pan and zoom, it's actually changing what's going to be printed. So this is what's called like model space, and your layout is what's called paper space. Okay, and this lets you do drawings that have different scales and that are from different parts of your model space drawing, all in the same layout. So it's really powerful. It takes a little bit to get used to, but it's really powerful. So I'm going to go ahead, and it's interesting, if you click on the window here, if you need a specific scale, click on that window on the cyan color just one time. You can go down to the properties inspector and you can go to standard scale and change that to anything you want, like quarter scale or half scale, and that's how you get a specific scale. Okay, so again, I kind of double click and I might kind of center that a bit. Okay, and then when I'm done, I can go ahead and double click out, and that's my layout. Okay, and then when you're ready, you're in the layout. You go plot, and it's gonna say all kinds of things. Set it up for a printer like the HP Laser Gray. It's fine. Just something that you might potentially plot to. Don't set it up for anything like the Mac print or anything like that. Just set it up for a regular printer. You're not going to actually print to it, but it helps with the configuration. You're going to make sure that this is set to 1:1, and this is not checked for line weights. Okay, you don't want to mess with any of that. We're going to go ahead and go into page setup. And you want to make sure that your plot style table is set to the 2101 file. Make sure you check print with plot styles. Print line weights should be checked. That probably won't change. Don't check scale line weights, 1:1, that's fine. Make sure the orientation is horizontal. And you're going to want to, if you don't have an 11 by 17, you can create a custom size. And you just basically say plus, make a new one, and then change the paper size to 17 by 11. Change the name of it. Press OK. And that's pretty much going to give you the option to do 11 by 17. Okay. Again, if that's not set up in your printers already, if you don't have a legal size, you can do that. All this looks good. Press OK. If you don't have this whole dialog, by the way, you need to make sure that you press this little option here, and that'll expand it for you. Okay. Make sure you use the plot styles, or the lines will come out right. Press OK. Okay. Once this comes up, don't mess with any of this. Okay, even if it looks like it's printing wrong, just keep it as it is. Go to PDF, and then for our assignment, you say save as PDF, and we're going to save it to the wherever, say desktop, my drawing. Say save, and I'm going to replace it, the copy I had, and it's going to plot basically. You can give it a second. Okay, complete. Let's go to the desktop. And if you look at that, this is what comes out. And you can see that there's the heavy line and the regular kind of lines, and then the thinner lines, and my red line, and the gray lines. And check this out. This is the one that was draw order was placed above, and this is the line that was placed below. Okay, and so you get a sense of what that actually means when you you choose that option. And then lastly, we want to get rid of this Autodesk label. So we go to Tools, Edit Object, and delete these. Okay, and then when you're done, you just save it. And that is what you could put, that's one page of what you could put on your monitor. Okay, and again, the line weights are built into the template, and we access them by choosing layers. We use the PDF layout and 11:17, and when we plot it, everything comes out fine. Okay, so that's the generic way to proceed through the assignment. I'm going to stop here, and then in the next part I'm going to talk about some advanced drawing functions and a little bit of advanced layout. Okay, but that's just the kind of basic workflow for starting with AutoCAD, getting the template started, drawing some measured lines, and setting it up for plotting. Okay, I'll see you in the second part.